Welcome to Deliberately Intentional with me, Remi Fagman. Today we're going to be talking about our human superpowers. Your superpower is a fancy way of just talking about your natural gifts. But I like fancy, so we're going to go with superpowers for today. If you know anything about the superhero world, something happens to you, either good or bad, that impacts your life, right? So let's take Spider Man, for example. Don't ask me why that's the one that came to my mind, but he got bitten by a bug. He was naturally a good person. So when he got bit by a bug, he became a hero, superhero. Some people, bad things will happen to them, and it makes them a villain. Naturally, we are all going to go through so many different things if we're careful and depending on the things that have happened to us, depending on whether we had some good things happen to us at a certain point of our lives, then when the other things happen, they won't impact you so much and you can still be good and you could turn that around. And for some, if they've been beaten so many times, meaning beaten not by the physical activity, but just life has happened to them in so many different ways, then it impacts them and it changes them. So I'm going to talk about how I developed my superpowers. I'm only going to talk about three because I have a lot, but I'm going to focus on only three for today. The first one is my ability to talk to anyone. Doesn't matter if it was God sitting in that chair, I would literally have questions. Nothing intimidates me. Nobody intimidates me. I can literally talk to anybody. I can walk up to anyone, whether we've spoken before or not. I can strike a conversation. Where did this come from? From me being bold enough to talk to my dad, even though I knew I would get beaten, even though I knew he probably wouldn't answer, I just kept at it. And that is kind of what has now created this fearless person. If you can talk to your parents, regardless of how hard or how bad it may be, and in my own situation, it wasn't actually the best scenario, but because of it, it created this person that could literally talk to anyone. I, in turn, took that superpower. I use it to help my clients now. I use it when I have, well, most of my celebrity clients, of course, when people would probably be too intimidated to tell them, hey, they've done something wrong, or hey, they've done this. I've never had that problem. I can tell you categorically in a way that wouldn't even make you feel offended that this is what you've done that's messed up, which in that world, if you know anything about it, that's very rare because most people don't want to they don't want to shake the boat. They want to rock it at all. But bringing that into real life situations, my spouse and my son. Now, because of that fearlessness, it doesn't matter how much they both may frown, and trust me, they frown all the time when I'm trying to correct something or I'm trying to get them to do something. Of course, everybody wants to see things their own way. But because of this fearlessness that I developed with my dad in the worst of situations, but because of it, I'm able to still find ways to get through to them. I know a lot of people, because I'm coaching a lot of people right now, that they find it very difficult to talk to their spouses. They find it difficult to speak up in in corporate environments. They find it difficult to even defend themselves verbally or in, even situations that are rougher than that. They just can't. So that's one of my superpowers. And it can help you too if you sit back and think about it like, you know what? Why exactly am I uncomfortable speaking my mind? Why is it so difficult for me to tell my partner, my friends, anyone what I want or how I feel? Why? Another one of my superpowers is my ability to solve problems. I have one of my favorite saying, my quote that I say all the time is that every problem has a solution. And that's my firm belief. I feel that there doesn't matter what's going on in your life, doesn't matter how bad a situation you think it may be, there is a way out of it. And that also came from my childhood because I have said this story a few times, but I'll say it again. I had to look for, even though I was in Nigeria, I was born in America, but I did not have a single shred of paperwork. I just had memories saying that I knew I was born in America. My mom had died. My dad was definitely not going to hand over any information. So it's like, I know I was old enough because I moved back to Nigeria when I was 12. So I knew it existed, But it took me years of digging through my dad's stuff with him not knowing for me to be able to find it. So imagine you looking for paperwork for years in a way that your dad, because remember, you all live in the same house. You're going to school, he's going to work, but just, and his rooms are locked and what have you. And you're digging through for years, knowing that you needed to prove yourself. I knew that it was a step-by-step process. I'm good at planning. But my point is, that was a really big problem. And we went through a systematic process of getting his key and getting a copy of his bedroom key made. Don't ask me how. We got a copy of the key to my dad's bedroom made. Then we had to have somebody on the lookout to look out for what's his schedule? When next is he going to be back? Who's going to be on the lookout at the door while I go through his stuff? And now do it in such a way, but you also have to keep track of where the last place was that you checked so that you can go back and do it again, whatever week it is that you have the opportunity. It was a systematic and annoying process, but at the end of it, I got a result. I eventually got my passport. From digging through all of that stuff, I didn't have any other way to find it. But the point is, with all of that, it has now created, and mind you, there's also been several other processes since then. Not only did I get the paperwork, I also eventually did the same filing for my sisters. They didn't end up having the same process that I did because I had set the tone and set the pace for them. I'd already gone to the embassy and sorted so many things out. So by the time they went, it was just a case of them presenting the fact that, hey, this is my sister. She already set this up for me. And there you have it. Because of that, remember, I learned this while I was a teenager. How can I now get to 50 and not be honing those skills even more? I didn't even realize it was a superpower, if I'm being 100% honest. They were just the fact that when people would tell me things, and this is still the case to today, if I'm sitting down and I'm talking to anyone, mainly my clients, but if you tell me a problem, as you're telling me the story, it's like that little scene in Harry Potter where you're taking out your memory with a wand. It's literally the same thing. I can literally see the source of that problem. This is what the problem is. You're telling me the story, but I'm sifting through and I can find the problem. Once you find the problem, it's easier to find a solution. Most people are trying to solve a problem that they think they know what it is, but it's usually the wrong thing. You always think that, hey, maybe the infidelity is because I wasn't cute. Trust me, that's not the problem. Or you don't have a job because you've been applying. That's not the problem. There's usually something more. And most of us are not cognizant of what that could possibly be. So we end up doing the same things over and over and over again. So being able, that little superpower of mine, being able to sift through and find the source or find the problem when people are talking to me started from me applying that to myself. So let me see, the third one, because remember I said I had a lot of superpowers, but I would say that my third superpower that I want to highlight now is patience. That's the one thing that a lot of people do not have. You cannot get the best out of life without patience. You have to realize that everything you're doing is a process. Remember that little story I told you guys before about, sifting through my dad's stuff to get my own passport? Like it or not, that set its own. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm very, very detailed in the planning and in also the execution. And in order for me to be, even after you plan and you can execute from today to tomorrow, if you're not patient, none of it is going to come to pass. Whether it's dating, whether it's raising your kid, whether it's building a business, you have got to have patience. I'm not saying just sit there and wait indefinitely, but having a plan in place and knowing that, okay, this is going to take time. This may be the amount of time, knowing when to tweak it and knowing how to just turn your own situation around and also control your own thoughts so it doesn't turn negative on you in the process while you're waiting, because both of these things are prone to happen to all of us. We get impatient, and because we're impatient, like it or not, we either ditch it right before it could have turned around. My favorite saying when I talk about my relationship most of the time is I say that I don't want to treat my relationship like a loaf of bread that I had kneaded and I waited for the yeast to rise and I did all this stuff and it's in the oven and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm tired. And that's what a lot of us do. We get so impatient with things, and literally you could have just had a couple more minutes and it could have worked out. Being patient allows you to know that, like it or not, what you're doing is going to yield you the results. Remember, I also said I was a problem solver. So it's not like I'm sitting there just waiting and just sitting around and thinking that it's going to just happen without doing anything. I'm actually actively doing things and then watching it all come to pass. But yeah, it's time sensitive too. Like it or not, each of us has superpowers. If you know superpowers, natural gifts, we all have it. If you know what your superpower is, before you even start thinking about a relationship or even while you're in a relationship, you'll realize that what you uniquely have is not going to be the same thing that your spouse or your best friend or your kids have. There's going to be slivers of things that you have that might be a little, similarity, but it's not going to be the same thing. And that's what's going to give you the grace to deal with your partner or your friends or the work environment, your coworkers. All of it is required for you to also know that, you know what, I'm unique in my natural talents. Everybody doesn't have these natural talents that I have. So that would also give you a way to understand that the next person doesn't have the same things that you do. So your superpower is really you. That's your DNA. That's your fingerprint, right? The next person's not going to have the same thing. The biggest problem I find when I'm dealing with most of my clients when they're coming to me talking about the relationship, I don't understand why she doesn't do this. I do it this way. She will never be you. She's different. Your love should exist for your partner outside of what they have that's different from you. Their superpower, she might be a great homemaker. She might be good in the medical field. She might be great at dealing with people and in-laws. And you might be the one that does the figures. Don't get mad at her because she can't do figures. That's your superpower. Her superpower is different from yours. Your natural gifts, whether you like it or not, that I'm terming as superpowers, makes us all uniquely different. For some people, the same thing you have, just like heroes and villains, your partner, the worst thing that could happen to anyone is if they end up marrying a villain who's exactly opposed to whatever it is that is the ideology of that hero. So when I say you need to understand yourself before you start dating, this is kind of what I mean. You need to understand the natural things that you bring into any scenario. Some things about you that will never change. These things about me have never changed. I've changed a lot in other regards in my relationship, but my core superpowers haven't changed. They've just gotten better. If you recognize what your superpowers are, then whether you like it or not, it would help you a lot in deciding. It would help you decide on who looks like this is going to mesh well with. Because these superpowers that I have may not necessarily mesh well with everybody. To be honest, they don't. I knew when I was dating that I knew I was unique. One of the reasons why I said that I didn't want to get married was because I felt like I don't think I'm going to find anyone that's going to be able to tolerate how opinionated I am, how bold I was with my speech. There were a lot of things about me, and I didn't feel that everyone would be able to understand it until I met my husband. So you've got to also own certain things about yourself and know that that is me. This part of me will not change. Other places, I've gotten a little softer in some places. The places that I needed to get softer, I'm not mad at those changes I made. Those had to happen. But in other regards, I don't think that anyone that is not okay, and I was very detailed about this when I was dating, the guys that said to me that, oh, you've got to change this, that was my cue. That was my red flag. When they start saying you're too friendly, I'm not going to change being friendly. I can't change being outspoken. I can't change a lot of things about myself. Again, those are my superpowers, so why would I want to change them? But that's kind of what you need to do too. Don't get desperate. Don't get impatient and just say, you know what, I'll change this about myself when there's some things that are actually a core part of you. It's super important. Some things are a little light and not necessarily good traits. Those you might lose. But some things that are really, truly you have to find someone that's going to be okay with it from jump. Not try to change you. Because the worst thing that you could do is try to put a square in a round hole, which we all know. But that's the same thing that happens in a lot of marriages and a lot of relationships and friendships when you really, really try to conform. And it's really hard for you to do that because it's not naturally who you are. So, what have we learned? Today's episode is all about superpowers, mainly because I like superheroes. And I just wanted to use this analogy to let you realize that there's some things about you that are great. And there's some things that, yes, you should change. That's just the way we humans are. We are not born perfect. I've had things that I've worked on, and I'm sure you do too. But finding the perfect person that can accept you with your superpowers and deal with you the way you are, now that's a happy ending. That's a happy story. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Not a happy ending because I know what that means. That's the happy story. That's a happy marriage. Do what part do you want me to do over there? Didn't flow. Okay. The way I said happy ending and my mind just went elsewhere. Leave it? All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Deliberately Intentional. I hope that you enjoyed talking, or I hope that you enjoyed listening to what I view is important about your superpowers and your natural gifts. Tune in again next week, Wednesday, for another amazing episode. Bye.